Welcome, everybody. Today we have Myles Usher-Doyle, who is the founder of SpeakWell Coaching. So thank you so much for coming on to the show today, Myles. It's really great to have you. And it's been great getting to know you the past 6 months here, almost, I believe. And really happy to have you on the show. So if you'd like to introduce yourself a little further and tell everybody what you do and those things, we can go from there.
Fantastic, Phil. It's a great pleasure to be with you. Thank you again for inviting me on the show. It's lovely to be here. Yes, Myles Usher-Doyle, SpeakWell Coaching, public speaking, speech coaching, everything under the sun that goes along with that. The consultancy has been in operation for about 13 years in one way, shape or form. And we work with people who are looking to improve their public speaking skills, hone in what they've already got, people who are absolutely terrified of the whole idea of public speaking. The idea just throws them into an absolute spasm. So it's this sense of looking at what that fear is, what can they do. We look at elements such as posture, poise, diction, improvisation, storytelling, everything under the sun there. I do small groups, roundtables, open forums, but my main bread and butter, as it were, is the one-to-one model, Phil, which you are a recipient of, that particular coaching. So yes, and the main reason why it's sort of one-to-one and small groups is purely because I like working with individuals and personalities and meeting the client where they are at currently and enhancing what's there, as opposed to this idea of completely changing the way you speak. I think that's quite a scary place for people to be, and it's sometimes people don't want to go that far, and that's not really my access point. It's looking to enhance what's there and then see what else we can do throughout that process.
I love it. And yeah, it's been fantastic working with you, which is why I wanted to
Thank
bring you on the show. And actually, that really allows us to go into a place I was hoping to get to, which is, of course, the big question of the fear of public speaking, but overcoming that fear and gaining the confidence of oneself into speaking or anything that we do. But in this instance, when it comes to public speaking, making a presentation, or even just presenting oneself to others and how we do that. So I know there's a few different paths there, but maybe if you can speak into, from your experience working with others, what it's like to help them overcome certain fears and uncertainties within themselves when it comes to speaking.
Yeah, it's a great question. And public speaking is definitely up there with the top fears that we as humans have. I think it usually knocks up around the number 3 mark in the charts of fear. So it's just behind spiders and heights. It's usually public speaking. It's glossophobia is its official title, the fear of public speaking, and what that fear looks like and what it could be. And I think the main thrust of that particular fear is twofold. One is judgment, and the other is stepping into the unknown. And I think those points alone are enough to really put the wind up anybody who is looking to do something like that. So if I'm working with somebody who is absolutely terrified of public speaking and they go red and they mumble and they want to be somewhere else, we really just unpack what that is. And usually it comes from a point of perhaps they're a shy individual. Perhaps they had a comment when they were at college or school or university or something that has stayed with them forever. And it's that sense of stepping into the unknown, but almost embracing that fear. And I know that sounds very cliche, but it really is this idea of just embracing what the situation is. And if we think about what we like as individuals, if we like to go to live theatre, live sporting events, live concerts and gigs, what is that feeling that we like to witness when we're in the audience? And it is that sense that the unknown, yes, where anything can happen. And it's buying into the excitement as opposed to the abject fear of that, oh my word, anything can happen. This is incredibly exciting. I wonder what that could be. Now, mixing that with a sense of preparation and being as prepared as one can be to front that situation, Because yes, you're absolutely right. If somebody just said to you, Phil, you've got to present to 50 people in 2 minutes, go. That
Right.
is enough to sort of rabbit in the headlights and okay, it's it's hesitant. It's a sense of what on earth am I going to do? So we really sort of break these things down. And the main access point for people coming to work with me who are particularly fearful of public speaking is usually because they have got to do a presentation, which could be at work or, and not so much these days, but when I started, it was wedding speeches. Best man speech, the father of the bride, the groom, the bride, or whatever, or on the rare occasion, a funeral eulogy or something like that, where you are forced through a sense of etiquette to deliver a piece to a room of people. And the best way that someone could tackle that fear is just by doing it in the sense of through preparation and rehearsal with a professional sounding board, i.e., me, being there to say, okay, right, what are we actually doing here? Let's strip it right back and look at the bare bones. And that reasoning there is to make sure that the client is moving in a direction of, I am doing this with a purpose.
Mhm.
And my motivation isn't, oh my God, I've got to do this and get it out of the way as quickly as I can so it can just be all done. I can go back to my fearful state. That's not the place to be. I'm always looking to advance that person into that particular realm. So yeah, it's twofold. It's people who want to hone in on their public speaking skills and then that person who is completely terrified. And it's interesting, during the sort of life cycle of the business to date, I now tend to work with more people who just want to improve their public speaking, hone in on their storytelling skills, eliminate some vocal anomalies that may have cropped up. So, for example, filler words is usually a big one. I feel as though I fall into the trap of like, literally, are, all that sort of stuff. And then looking at that problem in its abstract sense, but then looking at it in a more sort of realistic sense as well, and trying to keep it as aligned to social conversation where we can. And I think, Phil, if we take our minds back to when you and I first started working
Yeah.
together, that point of social conversation is a great place to start because it's just a great access point, and we all know what it is to have a conversation with our best pal over a coffee, over a beer, a glass of wine or whatever, or at a house party or a dinner party. We know that sensation. And we equally know that sensation when we're having a good conversation. It feels good. It feels really great to be in a nice sort of tennis rally of offers being accepted and thrown backwards and forwards where great conversation can happen. So, very long-winded answer to your question, but it is that sort of sense of looking at those 2 points of generally where are those access points for me to work with people. And these are individuals who are entering the world of work all the way up to podcasters who are very much at the top of their game and hosting some of the biggest shows in the podcast sphere.
Yeah, that was a beautiful answer. And thinking more into that, and when we first started, I know I came to you saying, "Hey, I'm seeking how to speak more eloquently
Yes,
and
yes.
with more clarity." But what was interesting in just a few short months of working together was it didn't become so much of that, but it came much more of being actually speaking from a real authentic place within me. And what I like to call from like more of my gut, more of this
Mm,
intuition type place, more instead of trying to overthink, which still happens, want to inject logic and all this, but how to allow this part of me inside of me come through speech naturally.
mm.
And I'm curious if you can speak a little bit more of how it's been working with clients to bring that up within them and how to allow more natural flow of conversation.
Yeah, and again, another great question. These are all great questions. Well done. It's that sense of, so authenticity is a phrase that tends to be bound around a lot these days. And I'm not entirely sure that people know what it actually means in its purest sense. So again, the reason why I work with individuals one-on-one more often than not is because I like working with individuals and personalities because you've got your own individual way of speaking. You might sound like somebody else perhaps, but you won't be exactly the same. And we are very savvy these days as audiences. We can spot out somebody who's speaking in an inauthentic fashion or a slightly artificial way. And it's very off putting. It's almost like that sort of greasy second-hand car salesman. That character isn't, okay, I'm sure they are still around somewhere, but they're not quite as prevalent as they once were. Uh, it's an interesting sort of thought that, but this sense of speaking as you, especially if you're an entrepreneur, if you're running your own business, you are usually the brand. You've got your business, but you are normally the spearhead. You're fronting the business. It's you, and it's you who we want to see, and it's you who we want to hear from as well. So I am always holding clients to account, as you know, and think, actually, I'm not sure you would start a sentence like that, Phil, for example. I think you might be doing that because you're putting your corporate front over this. I would rather hear how you would say that to me if we were just out for a coffee. What does that look like? And again, it moves you much to a more warmer place and a more comforting place because you go, oh yeah, I speak like that normally. There's instant connection there. And if you're connected personally, not just with the text, but also with the way you're delivering, then 9 times out of 10, your audience is going to warm to that delivery as well. Because it's always got to be, as I've said to you plenty of times, I'm only interested in Phil telling the story. I'm not interested in corporate presenter 2.0. It's got to be you. And you find, and perhaps you may have found in the past, I'm not sure we've ever had this conversation, but where you have delivered a presentation at work or in a more corporate setting, and you have felt that you are just treading water vocally and think, actually, I'm not sure I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm present at the moment. I'm just sort of saying words for the sake of saying words, which, as we all know, is a pointless endeavor because that dabbles into the area of small talk. And I'm not anti-small talk. I always like to stress I'm not anti-small talk. I think it's a very useful tool to access a conversation. But it's when people put too much trust in that idea of small talk and the whole conversation is on the weather and it's, going into 40 minutes, again, talking about the weather. We think, yeah, okay, maybe we need to find a bit more depth here. Because humans relate to humans, don't we? This is where we find that attraction. This is where we find that interest. And this is where we find that relatability. And it's always a good task if you think about some of the businesses or the content creators or the YouTubers or the influencers who you like or the podcasters you like. It's usually the person who's speaking as themselves because you can then connect to that a little bit more. It's not too showy. There isn't too much gloss over there. And it's very tempting to put gloss on it. I can completely see that. And Phil, I'm sure you've had that sort of pull of temptation when you put something out on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever and think, oh, maybe I'll just tinker with this and make it look a bit neater and that sort of thing. And that's fine. But I think if it goes too far one way, the less I have of you, the more distant we become. And I think it's that point alone, really.
And that's something I think related to the quote that you gave me. Be bold, be boring, and see what happens.
Yeah.
And that quote has stuck with me because it's like, be bold into saying something maybe your logical mind is trying to block from inside of you. Be boring because you want to be a good listener because you're maybe spending too much time in a logical state trying to answer a question or come up with the perfect thing to say.
Sure.
And then to see what happens of just letting go.
Yeah, it's a great valve loosener, I think, that technique and that quote. It does it lowers the stakes ever so slightly. It makes you consider your approach a bit more. Because I think if we try because the opposite of be bold, be boring is be original, be interesting all the time. And the stakes are so high in that regard, it's almost unattainable. And it forces you to try your best. And I often think that trying your hardest and your best isn't always your best strategy. I think you can get into a position by lowering the stakes, making it a bit calmer. You can be a bit more bold And the phrase "be boring" just means you sort of just step into something and just see what happens, rather than thinking every sentence has got to be
Mhm.
the most original piece of text that anyone's heard. It's an impossible endeavor. Even Oscar Wilde had some of his lines prepared. It's that sort of thing. It's a famous story of Oscar Wilde leaving, I think it's a train station in Oxford, I think, and saying goodbye to all these students on the platform, and giving some great, rhetorical flourish as he's saying cheerio, and then the train pulls away. And then there's a problem with the train and it stops before it leaves the station. So of course all the students gather around his carriage again, and he just sat there and said, "I've got nothing else to give you. I haven't prepared anything else." So it's that sense of going, it's an exhausting endeavor to sort of have everything prepared for every single occurrence. And you find when people are in that frame of mind, and as you quite rightly say, they're not listening. They are sitting at the dinner party and you are talking to them. They're not listening because they are trying to squeeze in their hilarious line that they take with them, or their hilarious anecdotes they take with them to every social occasion, to try and prize that into what's going on. That great sort of, it's a bit of a bore when someone's doing that. And really the main point is they're not listening,
Yeah.
which makes you feel a bit, it sort of takes the stuffing out of you, because that person isn't offering you something for you then to pass back. They're almost blocking your approach into that conversation. So it becomes a very one-sided tennis rally in that
Yeah.
sense.
And
Yeah.
and they're blocked in their own head.
Yeah,
So
exactly right. They've got nowhere to go. They're stuck in a
yeah.
sort of cul-de-sac of nothing.
Yeah. And they may be too busy in their own mind thinking of the perfect thing to say or question that they're missing completely that connection with somebody.
Exactly. And you're going to give yourself more of the option to be original, I would say, and interesting,
Yeah.
if you are going at it from a approach of being bold, being boring, see what happens. The opportunity for you to be interesting is a lot higher than the other way around, because the stakes are just way too high. And I just want to lower them slightly or remove them altogether. So you're in a much more neutral stance for you to tackle that conversation and to just say what you mean. And you
Yeah.
usually give yourself and your mind the freedom to go, "Oh, okay." It's a great defogging of the mind, that approach. It makes things a lot cleaner and clearer for you to access a more enjoyable conversation happens from being bold and being boring and not trying too hard.
I love it. And it really started resonating in me of like the listening part. You're not just listening verbally, too. You're also
Mm.
reading body language, the emotion that might be there. And that could be, and correct me here if I'm wrong, but like reading an audience, even if
Yeah.
you're out and speaking to 5,000 people, or on a date, speaking to an
Mhm.
individual across
Mhm.
from you, and really honing in and listening and making that connection with them.
Exactly right. Yeah, it just gives you the freedom to be
Yeah.
more authentic.
Yeah.
It's more you, and that's really what I'm interested in. It's pushing more of you to the front and then enhancing what's there. Okay. And that's when we get down to the details of how you're standing, how you're sitting, what status are you telegraphing to the room, what messages are you beaming out to the room, where's your focus, what's going on? Are you looking down here, looking up here? Where's the audience? Where's the person you're speaking to? Are you maintaining eye contact? Are you breaking it very quickly? It's these sorts of things. And we can really telegraph different emotions, really unbeknownst to ourselves at that point in time. Because even if we're sort of quite closed and, looking down and glancing down and focus is down and keeping our speech very close to our chest and, sort of just, sort of whispering, and I'd quite like, you're almost telegraphing a sense of, I would like to be somewhere else. I find this incredibly uncomfortable. And the person you're speaking to is going to react to that and think, oh, I should probably leave this person alone. They are clearly having a terrible time trying to have a conversation with me. And it makes it all a bit one sided. And, some people are good and are there looking to sort of coax that person out of their shell. Some people don't have time for that. They want to sort of move on, or they won't hang around. So if you're thinking at a networking event or a job interview, there's sort of more corporate sounding settings. that's perhaps not a great persona to uphold. And I understand, like, I do get it. It's a real sense of vulnerability to make sure you're standing up properly. You are exposing yourself, as it were, to a wider space, and which means you're opening yourself up for critique, criticism, judgment. People are going to listen to you because you're there to present yourself to be listened to. And that can be a very scary place to be. So, going back to the beginning of this call, of this conversation rather, it's that sense of, if I'm up and open, oh my word, people are going to listen and watch me. And I go, yeah, that's almost the point. Now, let's look at content. Let's look at the story. What are you telling? What's going on here? And then we get into that neat moment of looking at artistry. So if the craft is how I'm standing, how I'm sitting, where's my focus, the artistry element is where we're looking at what we're saying and why we're saying it and what the point of it is. And that's where the magic happens, from that point of artistry.
I love that. And thinking about being my logic side. No. But thinking about some of the things you're saying, what are maybe a handful of maybe tips or things that you would say, practices
Mm,
for somebody to start to hone in on their own authentic voice and also allowing themselves to be immersed into a conversation or whatever they may be presenting to,
mm.
if you want to reveal those secrets?
Yeah, of course. What I'll do is we'll look at the sort of initial things that we look at in the first call. And again, let's take our minds back to our first call where we had our very first session. It was that sense of, how are you sitting? How are you standing? How are you presenting yourself? That really dictates everything. I think the posture and the body language of a person, everything begins from there. And so if I'm working with somebody who is incredibly nervous, or they are looking to hone in on some other skills that they may have, it's that sense of getting rid of any sense of tension, getting rid of any sense of something that's holding them back. So usually it's a rounded shoulder, or people are presenting quite, with bad posture, which encourages the sound to be kept far back. It encourages themselves to sort of scuttle away. The confidence they're beaming out and the status level they're beaming out is quite low.
Mm.
And therefore, you could say to the audience, why am I watching this person? They clearly don't want to be there.
I
And
remember,
from, yeah,
I
exactly.
remember our first session, it was like, you gave me an assignment to create a speech for you, and I had no idea of what to expect or
Yeah,
anything. I just remember
exactly.
like, oh,
Yeah.
let me read this verbatim.
Yeah, exactly. And,
Yeah.
I'm not just being purposely mean in that moment. It's a sense of, I want to see how you start the sound live and raw, because from there, that then gives me a really good indicator of, okay, what status level are you at? Where are you? What's going on here? That will help lay the groundwork for me to make sure that the coaching is not only adhering to your objectives and your major objectives and your goals, but also keeping it as bespoke and tailored to what you want and who you are. So the training is always relatable, it's always relevant in that particular sense. And
Mhm.
posture is that one that's just gone completely out the window over the past 15 years, because, well, over the last 5 years with COVID and everything, and sort of the laptop class, as it were, everybody is craned over, lying on their couches or in bed or whatever, doing their work from here. So, of course, there is a great onslaught of bad posture around. Equally, the times you go out, down the streets and you meet people walking towards you, their default is going to be down because they're probably looking at their phone, or just, looking down. The encouragement of people having their phones to look down, either to look at Google Maps or City Mapper to see where they're going, or just to check their emails or check their socials, has encouraged this sort of default setting of focus down.
Mm.
So, of course, the generic point at the moment is people are down here. Now, when I want you to be up here, where your default eye line is up, it's a terrifying place to be for some people, because, oh, what, I've got to make eye contact from up here. People are going to look at me from up here. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's the point of the exercise. If you've got to do this keynote presentation in 3 weeks' time, then shock horror, people are going to be looking at you.
Mhm.
So let's just sort of break the back of some of those fears and go, yeah, okay, let's just get over that fact. And also get over the fact that people are looking at you and judging Phil as the entity. They're not. The audience is always looking at you and thinking, okay, what's Phil going to tell us? What's the story he's going to weave? We are seldom sitting there going, okay, right, so Phil's wearing a black t-shirt today. Yeah. Okay, so his hair's going that way. Okay. You know, people don't do that. People haven't got time to do that.
Yeah.
It's that sense of what is Phil going to tell us and what is the story. So if we can refocus and engage in our content, and again, that's a whole different kettle of fish, actually looking at what the content of the story is, what the script is, what is the presentation, where are we going with it, and what's the point of it. Once we've understood that, we can then start to embrace this sense of a higher status, married with telling a story that you know and that you've made relevant, and you've given a good motivator to that. Because 9 times out of 10, I will say to somebody, if I'm doing a corporate session, I'll say, okay, so why are we doing this presentation today? They will usually come back with, oh, because my boss told me to. And I'll go, that's great, but I'm not sure I care about that. I'm not sure I can buy into that. And I don't think you can either. I would rather it be, okay, you're telling this story because it's going to change your colleague's life, or this is going to save you a ton of time when you do your next project. There's other areas that you can look for to make the motivator a lot stronger. And therefore, once that has been found, you can then start to build a good story and then tell it from a point of being a good storyteller, as opposed to being a terrified individual delivering something because your boss has told you to do it. It's unfocused. There's no definition there. I'm all about the definition. What's the story all about? So once we get it, and again, getting into that craft and artistry element, that's where great things happen. And having me there to work with the client, either in person or on a call, to sort of pick up this person, say, okay, what's going on here? Why is this bit here in the presentation? Why is this bit here in the story? What's the point of that slide there? And I'll be there being quite sort of pointed with my questioning to really force the client into the corner to actually answer the question. Because once we've got to the point of answering the question or not being able to answer the question, then we can look at how neat the story is or how cluttered the approach is to the story. You know, why is that slide there? Oh, I don't know. I thought it looked good. Maybe we need to tinker with that. So again, that'll be another sort of point of rehearsal going, so why is that there? What's the point of that? Will your story fall to bits if that isn't there? No. Okay, let's ditch it. Are you hiding behind your PowerPoint? Is a good question I ask a lot, especially to corporate clients. You know, are you just hiding behind this? So it's those sorts of areas. So starting with posture and poise is always a place to begin with, because this shell of how you hold yourself speaks volumes. This speaks louder when you walk into the room, way before any sound is heard. And we know this, Phil, because we sit in audiences more than we do public speaking. The ratio is usually audience member a lot, speaker not quite so much, but fairly often. So we can sit there and be much more critical as audience members and think, what's going on here? What's the point of this? Why is this person speaking? And these big questions really help us, making us a much more efficient and successful storyteller, let alone a presenter.
No, that's great. And I wholeheartedly agree that posture, especially just when we're scrunched up here and we're down and our chin's down, we're protecting too.
Oh, yeah,
Showing
you're so on guard.
protecting the
Yeah.
throat, the chest, our heart, even because we don't want to expose ourselves.
Yeah.
We feel scared, and that applies in any situation, especially with, as you're saying, COVID and all that has allowed us to kind of shrink in a bit more, or at least had an effect of being more isolated to where we wanted to protect ourselves more as potential because of it.
Yeah, we become very insular, I think, and like to hide away.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because you sort of hide yourself away too much. And it's a real great shame that happens. And I think pushing yourself out there and just seeing what happens is a much better way not only to communicate but to live, really. I think go and ask that girl for her number. She might say no, but she might say yes. Who knows? It's that sort of way of going about it rather than living in regrets for a long time. That point of choosing one's regrets as opposed to what could be the best thing for me usually moves you into a different zone and makes you make much more cleaner decisions, I think.
Yeah. And it's something I noticed too, within myself, of eye contact. Big one. It's, for a while, I know my eyes were down more because I wasn't
Mm.
around as many people as I was or anything like that. And working remote and all those types of things too have a massive effect on social interaction. So you're looking down at a computer screen rather than up into somebody's eyes or face,
Mm.
or other places too, and just allowing your eyes to be seen up. Also, I think the other place I was thinking about was how much we forget of what we hold tension in places of like shoulders, but also
Yeah.
our jaw, our
Yeah.
facial muscles, even the larynx,
Yes,
everything.
exactly right. Those points of tension can hold us back. So if we're feeling incredibly nervous and apprehensive, the first sensation is tension. So that is why when we're working together in the early days, we really look to see if we can rid ourselves of that tension and bring ourselves to a much more neutral stance and see if we can grow from there as opposed to growing from a hidden place. Just to make you go, okay, right, I can start making good decisions and good ideas happen from a point of non-tension, the untense position. Great things can happen, and it allows you to attempt to be much more comfortable in the space, but more importantly, be present in the space. Have I turned up today? Is a great question to
Mm.
ask oneself on an almost daily basis, whether you're jumping on a call or you're meeting someone for a coffee. Am I here? Have I turned up? And the person who's got a good open posture can usually answer in the affirmative to that, as opposed to the other way around.
And I really like that. Have I shown up today? And
Mm.
some of the tips that you provided, and some of the other things here too, of just releasing tension, allows for confidence to step in, and authentic self
Mm.
to step in more. Because all these different things, even just physically tense and scrunched and protected, doesn't allow ourselves to authentically step in and be a bit open and vulnerable and say, this is who I am. I am here to have a great conversation with you. I'm here to present this or have a fantastic podcast episode and talk with you. When we're hiding behind our shell of self and we're behind confidence, we're behind everything, we lose out on actually interacting with life and being able to allow ourselves to expose that, to allow it all to come in.
Yeah, you're completely right. And it's amazing how much we can undermine our own confidence very swiftly. We can quickly make ourselves redundant as storytellers and presenters very quickly.
Mm.
It's amazing how quickly that can happen. So if you haven't turned up and you're not feeling present in the space, and what does that actually mean? And again, I sort of work with people in person quite a lot. So it's a sense of going, look, from what I can see, you look much more present than you did half an hour ago because we've looked to engage in a much more open posture. I feel as though you're starting to own the space as opposed to just being there or not wanting to be there. That sense of I'd rather be somewhere else, or equally, I want this to be over as quickly as possible because I feel so uncomfortable. And letting that be your motivator, but it's almost pointless. The whole action is almost pointless. I would write, like I've said to you before, Phil. When we're looking at stories and things, I will normally say, "This is great, but could this be an email? Could you just send this to me?" And you might go, "Maybe," or "No, I don't think so." I go, "Okay, talk to me more about that. Why could this not be an email?" Which is a very sort of pushy question for me to say, but as a coach, you've got to hold your clients to account. And it's this point to go, look, no, 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 no. Answer the question or attempt to answer the question. We might not answer it in this session, but I want you to start thinking in a slightly smarter way so we can see where we are.
Mm.
Making the point relevant and giving a meaning to what you're doing is going to move you into that direction of giving a good story or telling a good story, having a good conversation. What is it? What's the point of it? And I think we've all sat in meetings where we think, what on earth is the point of this meeting?
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's a good exercise for us to lean into that a bit more and go, if I'm thinking that in the audience, then I should be thinking about that even more if I'm about to step out on stage, if I'm about to hit record on a podcast, if I'm doing a quick piece to camera for social media.
Yeah.
It's those points, why are you doing it? Oh, I'm just doing it for a bit of exposure. And okay, that there's a lot to be taken in that, but people like to see things with a bit of a reason behind it.
Yeah.
The exposure piece is something that almost happens already because you're putting something up there. But if there's a meaning behind it, and people like to see the person. It's that idea as well, and there's a sort of thinking in the realms of social media here, but people like to see the person they could potentially work with. Humans react to humans, and it's not just the service you're selling, it's yourself and how you can work with that person. And as we all look for coaches in various different elements of our lives, be that your accountant or whatever, it's the person you like to see. You think, actually, yeah, they do seem as though they know what they're talking about, and I think I could work with them. I feel quite comfortable watching their video, and it's quite informative. It's entertaining. I think there's something there. This person seems to know what they're talking about. This seems to be a good partnership that I can engage with. It's those sorts of points. So, yeah, pushing yourself forward, putting yourself out there, and seeing what happens. And like with lots of my clients, they perhaps haven't done much public speaking, and they've always sat on their hands when somebody has said, "Who would want to present this piece?" And it's like with anything, Phil, as you know, it's keeping the reps up.
Yeah.
And in sessions with me, we are always looking to keep the reps up, just keep the rhythm going. Is it visiting the vocal warm up? Is it revisiting your actual piece that you brought with you? Is it looking at a piece of prose that you can deliver? It's keeping those reps going. Once you keep those reps up, you encourage these new states for you to start to operate on, as opposed to starting from down here. So yeah, it's an interesting point, but almost goes back to having that good posture and being present in the space. It's such a good question to ask. Have I turned up today? Do I feel present in the space? And if your instant response is no, then there's a point to have a conversation about.
Oh, that's great. And just imagine if people were able to show up initially with
Could you
this
imagine?
posture and poise and openness to each other, how much that could just change the conversation or change the direction of connection with each other
Yeah.
and
It just
making
brings much more
contact.
meaning to the situation as well. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. I think it does bring a much more meaningful conversation and encourages this time for, because we've all got those occasions where you can remember all those good friends that we have, and we love interacting with them. We love being in their company because it's humorous, or it's very informative, or it's poignant, it's touching, it's emotive. Something happens, a change happens, and you enjoy that time with those people. Your guard isn't up. And I think we certainly know when our guard is up or we feel uncomfortable around certain people, or family members or whatever. We know what it feels like. And we feel as though we're not there or would rather be somewhere else. But there's these small pockets of our social life where actually we go, oh, this is lovely. I can just be myself. And I know a good conversation is going to happen. There's no judgment or anything. It's just a place for good connections to happen, as you say.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap up, I got one last question. Something I like to ask is there one piece of advice or one thing you wish more people knew out there that you would like them to take back with them?
What a great question. I would probably say vocalize more and vocalize more often. So, and again, I don't want to throw all this into the working from home model, but it's a large proportion of lots of people's lives. And people are quite isolated these days. And if you wake up in the morning, you start work at 9, but you haven't got a meeting until midday, you might not say anything to anyone until midday. And I always want people to vocalize earlier a lot more. And that's part of our vocal warm up, as you and I know. But also, equally, it's just the more you can get your thoughts out there. So if you're preparing for a presentation or preparing for a speech, as opposed to going to the default protected option of writing everything down in a big script in prose and thinking it sounds fantastic in your head, because it always will sound fantastic in your head. We all sound like Winston Churchill in our heads. Okay, we all sound fantastic. We are the greatest orator known to man in our heads. Then when it comes to actually doing the exercise of delivering that piece out loud, shock horror, we don't always meet up to that mark. So a better option, and something I always encourage people to do, is if you're preparing for a speech or a presentation, just jot down a few ideas. It could be a sentence, 2 words, a phrase. Vocalize that as soon as it's on the page, because you will quickly determine, you'll think, that doesn't sound like Phil, or I would never say that normally. Or, yeah, actually, it sounds quite good. I mean, maybe if I tweak that and say this instead of that, you'll start to correct and self-edit a lot earlier. And therefore, you can start to build out your presentation in a much more authentic way. And also, the added bonus is the more you are vocalizing it, the more those lines are sticking up here, which means you won't be so reliant on the piece of paper in your hand when it comes to delivering that particular presentation. So vocalize earlier is my piece of advice I would sort of give to the room. Speaking about things, all things speech related. If it's something about life, what's one thing I wish people would take away with them? It's always right on the back of photographs of who it is, where it is, and the date. Because there are times when you're looking at old family photos and there's nothing on the back, and you think, I don't know who these people are. I don't know why this was in my grandparents' collection. So I'm always very keen to write on the back of photographs of who it is, where it is, and the date, just so if someone does pick it up in years and years and years to come, they can go, that's so-and-so and that's so-and-so. What else can I give you? The other piece of advice is always take a cab. If you ever think, should I take a cab? The default answer would always be yes. That's never failed me to date.
I love it. And no, what a great way to wrap up. Vocalizing early, and that just allows you to kickstart the day no matter what it may be. I like it.
Exactly right. Yeah, brilliant.
So, well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's been a pleasure. It's been fantastic working with you too. How can somebody reach you if they want to work with you or get to know you more?
Yes, so my website is speak-well.co.uk. We can find me on Instagram as @SpeakWell Coaching. Equally on LinkedIn, it's just my name, Myles Usher-Doyle, and you'll find me on there. And all my contact details are on my website, LinkedIn, and Instagram.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Once again, it's been a pleasure having you on here.
Pleasure's been all mine, Phil. Thanks so much.